Good morning cycling viewers, and welcome to another video where today we'll be discussing the Redshift suspension stem that I have fitted to my Mason Boker. So I guess the why is important. I bought this Boker with 650Bs for out and out gravel. If I'd kept it solely for that use, the stem might be overkill if I'm honest, but I tried some 32mm road slicks on it to kind of turn it into a road bike. I just found it ever so slightly harsh, especially when I think back to my days on the Diverge with its Future Shock. So I did some research, found this stem, and I've stuck it on. So let's get on with the video. The first thing you have to try and get past with this stem is the weight. Unfortunately, there's no hiding from it. But again, when you compare it to Future Shock, it's probably a lighter overall solution. Get it out the box, it feels weighty. It then feels even weightier when you take off your current stem, depending on what it is I suppose, but in my case the Super Zero from Data, which comes fully spec on the Mason Boker. It's a lovely stem actually, nice lightweight stem. So you've got to get past that first and foremost. But once it's mounted up on the bike, the weight kind of disappears a bit, doesn't it, in amongst the whole system. So to my mind, definitely worth it. So here's a public warning: if you do go ahead and buy this stem, it comes with a big warning / hazard sticker written all over it as to how you should install it and uninstall it. Do read that, because if you just go ahead and think you can crack on, you're more than likely going to damage the bolt that goes through and render the stem completely useless, which is a pretty expensive mistake to make. So do heed those warnings, especially you guys out there that don't like reading instructions like me. So there's a guy I know that's already had this stem, and his advice to me was if you put the elastomers in for your weight, you don't really feel much benefit. You can't feel it moving. So he actually went down a little bit on his weight. I decided not to do that for the interest of this review. I went straight in with what the recommended elastomers were, and in fairness, I thought for the first ride perhaps that he was right. It did take out the bigger hit, but I felt it wasn't the panacea of a solution that I thought it was going to be. But actually what's happened is, over sort of now, I must have done about 300 miles on this stem, perhaps a little bit more. Within about 50 miles, it's like the elastomers started to loosen up. And actually I think now they're absolutely correct for my weight. If I put anything lower in there, I think it would feel too loose and wobbly. So the way I've got this set up now is absolutely bang on. So in my experience, go with the elastomers that are recommended by the company for your weight. So here's a short clip then of me bouncing up and down on the handlebars, basically just to try and show you some movement from this stem. What we'll hopefully see now is I've mounted the camera to the handlebar, and we'll see if we can get any of that movement over natural bumps in the road and on some bigger hits on this gravel path that I've managed to find. Hopefully that's coming across and you can see the suspension that I am getting from this stem. It's not the most attractive stem, but it's nice, boxy, stealthy, matte black appearance. I quite like. I can fit my Garmin mount onto there, which is traditionally how I like to mount the Garmin. So I've been very, very pleased with it, and to the point where I've actually sold my Cannondale CAD now, and I'm putting the money I got from that into some nice carbon wheels that are going to go on this bike with 30mm tyres. At the moment, set up with these 35mm at a higher than normal PSI, this bike is still unbelievably comfortable. So I think I'll have no issues at all with 30mm tyres with this stem and the more comfort orientated seat posts that I've stuck on, which we'll discuss in another video. It's worth mentioning as well that the claim from the company is that this will give you about 10 to 20mm of suspension in the front end of the bike there. It's definitely the sort of suspension that's going to be utilised more for big hits rather than taking out road noise. You're going to have to rely on your tyre pressure for that. And in comparison to the Diverge, that's probably the biggest difference on the Future Shock. It had a progressive spring, so the first part of the travel took out road noise really nicely, and then if you had those bigger hits, that's where you sort of ditched into the second part of the spring, I suppose. Whereas for this, it's not going to do much for road noise. It's definitely going to do quite a lot for bumps and potholes in the road, and certainly off-road on the gravel tracks. I've definitely found it really, really useful and comfortable there. One of the things I want to answer is, who is this stem for? And I think most people could get a lot of benefit from this stem. Clearly with the new modern integrated carbon setups on aero bikes, you're not going to be able to get it set up on there. But you know, if you're going to go and do Flanders or Roubaix Sportive, or you want to dabble in a bit of gravel on whatever road bike you've already got, then get the stem and stick it on. It will definitely transform the front end of your bike into something far more comfortable and therefore pleasurable, I think, in terms of riding experience. So it's definitely worth a go. It is an expensive stem at about 150 odd quid, but for me I think that's totally worth it. You know, there's no maintenance that I can really think of to this unit, whereas the Diverge had a shelf life on its Future Shock. You had to ditch it off, you know, I think every 5,000 miles, something like that, which for me would be a year's riding. New Future Shock in there, which was more than 150 quid. This thing, you know, fits just about any bike, and I think it's a really good bit of kit actually. I've been really impressed with it, and it's going to enable me to take what is a very stiff, robust gravel bike, make it more comfortable on gravel, which wasn't necessarily a requirement, but it's going to be a secondary factor. But the primary bit will be to put some skinnier tyres on with some aero wheels and make it a comfortable road bike, because knocking on 35 and not racing, comfort is actually more important to me than most other factors when I'm out on the bike. Right, I think we're done. I think we're wrapped up. I'd definitely keep this stem. I'd definitely recommend this stem. If there's anything you wish I'd touched on or spoke about in this video, then please do leave something in the comments and I'll try to get back to you as and when I can. But for now, I'm going to head off and enjoy what is a pretty spectacular day yet again in the British countryside, and I think this jacket will be coming off pretty soon.